Welcome to Libertarians Drinking Coffee Live. So happy to have you here. It's a Monday, which is not normal for me, and I think that's true. Usually I don't do this on Monday, but I am today. It is a special day on Monday, a little bit past 3 p.m. on the East Coast, and I have with me a content creator, a producer, a cartoonist. I mean, all the things. The man himself, I assume, if he wants to call him the man himself, Jack Lloyd. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm definitely the man himself. That's for sure. I appreciate it, Larry. I'm doing great. And you just had some coffee yourself. I actually just finished some coffee. I got a new Keurig, and it's so convenient. I just can't believe how much time you can spend otherwise. I mean, I've done the French press thing. I've done, the boil the pot thing, but there's just something about being able to throw it in and quickly get a cup. It's very nice.
I'm considering us an IV drip that I walk around with. That is my considering, just a drip. That it might just be a better bet. I'm not really sure. I always tease people and I say the only drug I use is caffeine, but I use a lot of it. So maybe I have a problem. So what I want to bring up here, and for those people who don't know, you are someone who spends a lot of time in some way, shape, or form touching culture, right? You do a lot of that. And people might say, well, why do you do that? Doesn't make any sense. A lot of people in the liberty movement. And again, I recognize that the movement is not the party, that they're all groups. There's many ways you can move liberty. The party is one way. I tend to jump on the party, but that's me. I'm the crazy one. I keep punishing myself that way. Others don't. But you spend a lot of time touching culture. And I think the thing that moved me is you are very open about the idea of recognizing that most people aren't born libertarian, don't have it in their family, that they come from someplace else, that we have to move them somehow. Am I right here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, most people are not born into libertarian households. That it'd be quite a different world if everyone automatically grew up with, robust ethical and economics thinking. I mean, the whole world would be a different place. It'd be amazing, of course. But no, we are constantly evolving as human beings. We are growing and learning, from the shoulders of giants and people who decided to take intellectual risks and take a stand when few would in history. And I think that if we don't appreciate that just like in entrepreneurship, it takes visionaries to lead the way, light the way, educate others. If we don't take time to appreciate that, we miss the whole way that humanity evolves culturally. And so for me, that's always been a passion of mine, is changing minds, looking for different ways to engage people where they would never otherwise, think to engage with it. Because again, most people, your average person is just trying to live their life. They're just trying to get by, be able to afford clothes and their home and food and taking care of family, right? They're, and especially with inflation more than ever. So
you bring this up, right? This is the part that I like, right? And this is the idea that you feel like to change minds, you have to change culture. Or are you changing culture to change minds? Like, is this a chicken and an egg thing, or is it clear which one comes first?
Well, it's definitely both, because in order to change the culture, you need to have at least some minds change to then adopt these principles and then spread them in a consistent way, in a way that people can actually live on them and not just make exceptions. And that's a big part of the problem, is that if you have people who only are halfway there, then they're going to make exceptions for whatever political convenience comes up. They'll rationalize more state control or halfway measures because they haven't really internalized those principles. So, you need.
When they do that, though, I mean, this is the piece I want to bring up. When they do that, my worry is so many of us basically attack them and say, see, you were always a statist, right? Versus saying, okay, you came a little bit. Okay, but you fell back a little bit. Okay, you fell down. Okay, because you got scared of the boogeyman of the day, whatever is the boogeyman of the day, whatever the government uses to scare us into losing our rights. You fell for that one, whether it's the Russians or the Chinese or the virus or the thing, right? Whatever the thing is, you fell for it. Instead of us going, oh, okay, get back up. Come on, come back to us. We go, statist, damn you, and we yell at them. Am I wrong here?
I mean, I don't know if I would generalize like that. I think the main issue when it comes to those,
you don't know libertarians enough, then, because that's totally true.
Well, I've been in libertarian stuff and party stuff since 2006. So I've definitely seen about, quite a long time, but I think that the part that really where there is an important difference that needs to be actually delineated is the difference between leadership and just regular people. Of course, regular people who are just coming along, they need mentorship, they need guidance, and they need love and encouragement. 100%.
Good point.
It's
Good
just
point.
that there's a tendency because, within libertarianism, there's not as much affluence and influence as compared to, of course, the mainstream, that anyone who seems to have any semblance of something unique or special about them, I mean, even a working blue collar job or something, sometimes that's suddenly, their political savior. And so sometimes people will jump on these cult of personality trains with people who just gave lip service or just went from one enclave cultural line to another. And those people have not themselves actually been consistent. And now they're the new figurehead or the biggest podcaster, and they're out there saying contradictory things to the principles. And what you need is, effectively, if you're talking organizationally or culturally, you need that entryism where it's people saying who actually have the principles saying, hey, what they're saying, that's not, our core principles. That's not our core values. They're doing great things or they're right in these things, but you need that delineation. And I think that's, if we're going to tie it back to, LP stuff, that is a part of that issue there as well. Is that very often it's like, hey, you got a pulse, run for office, as opposed to saying, hey, you're new. You need to go through mentorship and training, show yourself over years. Okay, you really have internalized these principles.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because there's a problem in the party itself, right? Again, separate from other pieces. And to be clear, Joe brings this up, which I love. Joe says, Libertarian Party is to run candidates, is the run candidates wing of the liberty movement. That's true, right? That's the wing, 100%. And I feel like we should have less gatekeeping on people who want to just kind of be part of our world, and much more gatekeeping on people who want to represent us in the public, right? So if you just want to come aboard, I'm totally okay if you are anywhere near us. So you're in the area, come join us, talk to us, have some conversations, right? I remember when everybody was trying to get Tulsi Gabbard to become a libertarian, I remember that. And people were like, don't you want to come a libertarian? And I said, yes, I'd love to become a libertarian, but become a libertarian, be with us for a year or two, eat the same dirt that we eat, right? Get out there and deal with the issues. And if you're still with us a year or two later, we can talk about you representing us. The problem is to your point, we haven't done that. We've been like, she's our savior. Please come be our queen. We would love for you to come represent us, even though you have like 3 libertarian things, right? So again, she's not a perfect libertarian. She's not. But if she was with us for several years, what I know, and this happens, this every time, if you're with us for a year or two, you either leave us or become one of us. It's how it works. So bring them all in to hang with us, and they'll either go, you know what? No, I'm going to go back to where I was. Thank you for coming. Enjoy. There's a door. Good luck. Right? Or they become us. So I guess I'm reinforcing what you're saying, the difference between leadership and the average person. And I think too often we confuse the two. We attack the individual who isn't perfect and let anybody who's popular represent us, the exact opposite. So I don't know. Thank you for that. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and have seen that for the better part of 15, 18 years. And that is absolutely the core problem, is that if you don't have a consistent, coherent organizational message, and also entryism where you're actually training and mentoring, then you are setting people up for failure who eventually are going to flake and have inconsistencies in what they say. So you do need that kind of entryism. You do need people who actually stick around, learn the principles, learn the economics, can defend those things. And then, okay, now you actually want to run, or now you want to go into a higher level of leadership. Until then, be a volunteer at different things, table alongside and learn with people who are more seasoned. But until that time, when you really hold those principles down, it's going to be more of a disservice later on with the flaking and with the inconsistent messaging. And so that's just 100% agreement with us here, is that it's about bringing people in, but then educating them. And that should be every libertarian event. If someone's not walking away having learned something meaningful about ethics and or economics from really authoritative speakers, then I think that the LP is failing, their core values purpose, which is to build up and raise a generation of sustainable membership that will not flake just because they think, oh, well, I need to vote for Trump to win, or I need RFK to be my savior this time. No, you need people who are consistently thinking outside the state, who are robustly principled. You don't have to have half measures. There's plenty of people outside the Libertarian Party who could be half measured all day. The Libertarian Party is supposed to be that stalwart for liberty, that beacon of liberty that gets people to understand that the government is not the solution to life's problems.
But the funny thing you bring up, right, is I think about myself. I ran for governor in 2018. But before I ran for governor in 2014, I was our governor candidate's driver. So I was the spokesperson for Gary Johnson in 2016 in the press. So I was doing all the things. I wrote a check for when we bought the building in Virginia. I wrote a check on the party to help buy that building, right? So I was a donor. So I was a donor, supporter, all the things before I ran. And I joined the party, I think in 2013, maybe 2012, 2013. Gary Johnson's first campaign, 2012. But I don't know if I joined till 2013. But that's the first time I supported a candidate was 2012. And from that point on, I started to grow, and I'm with you. I guess I'm just reinforcing it. But you bring up something else, which I like. You talk about the idea of liberty starting at home. And that concept, I think, is something that most of us don't see. We think liberty is politics, right? That it's politics, and that's what it's about. But I think your point of it being more homegrown, and I see it even in my own kids. I have 2 daughters. And I raised my daughters with property rights. Like I didn't say those words, right? But I raised them with what is yours, what is mine, permission, right? Consent. These are things that I raised my daughters with. And one is off in college and one is in high school now. And in both cases, I can see that they're actually better citizens and better friends. And that may sound weird, but they actually are, right? My daughter's college her roommates like her because she doesn't just take things. She understands property rights. She asks permission. She understands consent, right? My younger daughter, same thing in high school. Like more people are her friends, right? So she gets it. It actually makes people better friends and better partners and better, workers, better everything. It does start at home.
I completely agree. And I talk about that as well in my books, that the principles of liberty, especially combined libertarianism and voluntarism, are holistic. They are things that apply to the totality of social experience in parenting, in your friendships, and how you do business. And if you want to be someone who models these principles, you want to be someone who respects the body and property of others. You want to make good on your promises and your contracts. You want to be someone who's honorable and has integrity. And you want to not be entitled, and be like, oh, well, I should have a right to, your stuff, that kind of thing. As you said, just like you raised with your daughters, they understand not to touch or take things that are not, theirs, and to respect the consent of others. And that's so often missed. That's a big point of conflict in relationships, is people acting as if they should own the body or property of others, or as if they have an entitlement to that. Yes. And they don't respect other people's, spaces or possessions. And that's, of course, very easy in college, having been there myself. Sometimes you're in a shared room and, someone it's as simple as they took your drink out of the fridge, or they're just, not being respectful of your stuff. Just little things like that. Again, the active advocacy of respect and being aware of your environment and other people's property rights. It sounds a little bit like academic or pedantic or something like that, but it's very real and applied, and it has something that breeds connection and trust with those around you. And if you value those things and those are the types of relationships you want, then the people that you're around are going to be people who respect you and who honor your things and don't want to do things without your consent or hurt you, right? It really is something that affects every part of your life.
So I want to touch 2 things you brought up. One was voluntarism, and the other one is your book. Let me go to voluntarism first. How do you differentiate those 2? And the reason why I bring this up, people often tease me. They said, Larry, when you got into the movement, you were able to kind of espouse a lot of the concepts very quickly, very easily for someone new to the movement. And I said, well, I was actually already teaching it. For people who don't know, my day job is I'm either a consultant, teacher, trainer, that kind of thing. And I've been teaching at a couple colleges here in New York City. And I'm teaching what I called post-industrial leadership. I made that term up. It's my term, whatever. You can take it. It's free. Anyway, so that's what I was teaching. And the concept was, when we're in the industrial world and factories, it's most important that the boss says, do this harder, faster, and you do this harder or faster. And you get more out of the person, life is good. But in today's world, it's much more about, I need your brain more than your arms and legs now. I need your innovation. I need your caring. I need your initiative. I need those things far more than arms and legs, right? I still need arms and legs, but I need this stuff more. And the way I get that is by you owning the job, you feeling ownership in the business, you feeling ownership in the task, right? You voluntarily wanting to have the task. So I was already teaching voluntarism in business. Goal setting, which is not me ordering you, but you telling me. All those, I was teaching it already. And I took that as voluntarism. That's how I took it, right? And then I brought it into libertarianism. But you see them a little bit differently. Can you help me define that?
Sure. And just to touch off what you said just there as well, right? When you have strong zones of decision rights, in other words, within a business, if each person, it's very clear what their roles and responsibilities are, then you also have very clear outcomes when someone is neglecting those things, right? Like one of the worst things in business is when people have conflicting roles or things that are overlapping, and they're like, oh, who's doing this? And that can create a lot of conflict because there's a type of tragedy of commons in the assignment of business responsibility, right? And as you said, if people have ownership in what it is, where they are going to be rewarded for their contributions or entrepreneurial thinking, being creative within the business, looking for opportunities, then that is a great way to incentivize people to come up with ways to provide more value. So 100% agree there. And so on that note, the definitive guide to libertarian voluntarism, where I make that distinction about the difference between libertarianism and voluntarism, is that I frame it as libertarianism having the property rights ethic, the development of what is property as being the focus, and then voluntarism ties to the consent aspect of what makes human behavior ethical as relates to property. So I kind of delineate those terms a bit in just those realms. And more so, libertarian side is definitely very propertarian. They stick out from people who are in the socialist, mutualist, kind of bent, the syndicalist bent, the communist bent, that kind of thing. So libertarianism is different in the property rights theory, and then voluntarism is about, okay, and then how do you have consent so you can manifest, ethical behavior as among humans?
So one thing I bring up often is people say, Larry, are you against socialism? And I say, no, I'm against forced socialism. If you want to voluntarily be socialist, and many times we are, I don't have a problem with that. Once you have consent, this goes to your point. Once you have consent, I don't mind. If you decide that you want to give all your money to some civic group or church group and allow them to hand that out as they see fit, you've decided it's your money. You can do so if you want to. No worries, right? You've decided that you'll do that. If you want to join a commune, if you want to join a co-op, right? If you want to do these types of things, you may. You want to join a cult if you want to and give them all your stuff. Up to you, right? I mean, it's your money. You can do your thing, right? Please don't join a cult. Unless it's my cult, then it's okay. All right, unless it's my cult. But my point is, we do it in our families. Many families are very communal. Many families are. But again, you've chosen, right, to marry someone or to have children with someone or to move in with someone or whatever you've done. So I like that distinction. That's clear to me. So
there's a property rights backdrop to there, where at a minimum, even within a socialist leaning arena, you would have to have at least property rights as a basis within where the zone is taking place. If you have workplace democracy, for example, like a democratic socialist would, you could say, okay, we all own the business in terms of everything is voted upon. I wouldn't advise that. But again, you could, within the context of property rights, have that. Whereas, as you correctly noted, if you have forced government socialism, well, then yes, they're saying no matter what you prefer to arrange to, then the government's forcing that. So yes, big distinction between us.
100%.
People.
So I want to go to something which I think might be more controversial. And that is your book. There's a lot of, you're like walking people there. That makes any sense, right? It's incrementalism. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. Or because I'm the same way, right? When you run for office, if as an activist, it's easy to yell, abolish everything. Very easy to yell, abolish everything. When you're running for office in a serious way, it's tough to say abolish everything because people don't want to hear that. It scares them, right? Oh my God, I'm scared. Now, if I'm an activist, well done. My goal is get people to care. My goal is get people to think. I don't mind that. But if you're running for office, you've got to have an actual plan. So, dynamiting something is not going to be the right answer if you're running for office, right? So, but you're not running for office. Well, at least now you aren't. And you're doing incrementalism. Do people push back on this?
Yeah, it just depends on, who it is and why they're pushing against it. In my book, A Vision for a Libertarian Future, I do lay out there a kind of framework to help people think about how we get from point A to point B, where we're talking about point A, what the government is now, point B, where the government has moved toward a more libertarian, voluntarist order, upending taxation, moving toward market means of funding, privatizing land, having market security, all those kinds of things. And for me, that's why I wrote that book, is because I did find it to be the toughest sell to people, is that even if you get people on the ethical side, you're like, okay, you're right. Okay, ultimately, government force is not the way to provide market needs. It still doesn't answer the questions of, okay, and what should happen to the nuclear weapons now? Or, okay, what happens to all the roads now? So I had to fill those gaps in a way that I thought people could actually get behind and would make at least some sense in a political reality sense. As in, you can get people to run on platforms of these types of incrementalist ways of moving the government toward a libertarian order. So there's going to be people, of course, who have their own different preferred stages of getting there, or their, first order priorities. I tried to focus on the taxation aspect and the Fed aspect.
Yes.
And again, that's, to me, one of the biggest roots, is that government being able to take from everybody by force means that no matter what they do with it, you have no choice over it. It's like, too bad. We get to take, no matter what.
Unique violence. Is that right? You actually call it that. You call it a unique form of violence, which I've never heard taxation called before.
Right. It's as opposed to other, rudimentary forms of violence, just your petty thieves and muggers and things like that. Taxations is very unique because it is widespread against all people. It's not just a simple little area where someone's being pillaged or being stolen from the middle of the night. It's against all people living in an area by unilateral forcible decree. And so it just doesn't matter whether your individual consent was given or not. It's just, hey, we're going to take your money, and if you don't like it because we're using it to bomb people around the world or spend it on wasteful government programs, well, too bad. Good luck voting for someone that's going to change that when they know that ultimately the Federal Reserve, having control of what happens with the fiat supply, can just enter in entries into their books of checks purchases and inflate the currency however they want. And you're really stuck because they have that total control. So we really need to get that out of there so we can have market money and meaningful resistance against government.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that drives me crazy, and you speak about this, is that a lot of people are totally okay with it, right? Like, they're not only okay with it, angry if you try to stop it. So if you were to say, I would like to stop this unique form of violence, they go, don't you dare do that. It's right and just. No. It's a unique form. No. Taxation, you have to have it. Without it, we're all going to die, right? We can't survive. There's no way of doing it. And I think that also, to me, if you said something else like, we want to stop a war, most people say, oh, okay, that makes sense. Let's stop the war, or let's stop people from being robbed or murdered. People will go, yeah, that's not, or kidnapped. Oh yeah, let's stop that. Stop taxation. What? That to me also makes it unique in my mind.
Yeah, of course, because the government papers over what actually goes on with the money. They, people see the products of debt. We look around and we see infrastructure and roads, but then in the backdrop, they don't think, oh, but wait, the U.S. government's 33 trillion in debt, and many state governments are also in their own forms of bond debt. So, they don't see the actual cost of what the government's actually done in the same way that someone runs up their credit card and they're like, oh, see, I got a laptop from Best Buy. And it's like, yeah, but you still owe thousands of dollars on that. You know what I mean? Right.
So absolutely.
It's unfortunate that the government has this ability to hide the nature of what's going on and to kick that can down the road. And that's, a part, of course, what I talk about in the Vision for Libertarian Future is, how do we move toward upending that ability to enter us into more debt and, reducing that debt, eliminating debt, and so on and so forth. So, that's the only way you get people really to understand is when they actually feel that pain. And of course, as I'm sure you're well aware, New York's felt that pain quite a bit with some government policies. And of course, we've all felt that pain thanks to the government spending and of course, the currency printing. And now everyone's really on board with seeing, okay, the government's really getting a bit far here when everything's 20, 30% higher, 40%, 50% higher in some cases. When your wallet's really being hit, you do get people willing to lend an ear a little bit more.
100%. And I want to talk to the audience for a moment. Sure. If you want to get his book, please head over to jackvlloyd.com. All of his contact information is all on either the Facebook page or the YouTube page. Feel free to go check that out. You can see everything that he's doing over there, from his comics to his videos to his movies to all the stuff he's doing. You can check it out there. If you want to, please do that. If you happen to like what we're talking about, then do me a favor. Click the like button. Why aren't you clicking it? Are you mad at me? Stop being mad at me. Click the like button. Do that right now. It does matter. It's how I get past Al Gore. Algorithm. That's how I get past the algorithms. Please help me get past Al Gore. It does matter. And of course, if you're watching on Twitter, retweet this right now. I know you're saying, wow, I don't know if I want to click that retweet button. I might miss 1 second. Yes, 1 second, but okay. You can always rewatch it. So click the retweet button right now if you would. If you want to help out, you can always super chat me. If you happen to be watching on YouTube, Larry Sharp, we'll get your chat to the front if you want to do that. All good. Happy to have you. Grab a couple comments if I could. We have a bunch here and a couple if I can. First one is that libertarian lady says, Larry Sharp, the hardest working libertarian in the U.S. I am trying. Absolutely. She goes on to say, as Spike Cohen says, we can't build a party calling everyone bootlickers. Yes, we have to change culture and stop insulting everybody. She's right. And so is he. Yes. Joe, of course, says, no, we need to tell them that they're not libertarian. Well, that's kind of our thing. So we kind of can't stop that. That's kind of our thing. He's kind of right on that one. Absolutely. So Breaking the Flow says, awesome guest. That's you, man. You have a fan. I like that.
Yeah, breaking the flow.
Yes. Michael Pickens says, I'm working on creating incremental policies for a county commission race in the near future, including voluntary taxation. Look at that. Look at that, voluntary taxation. That must make people happy. I like that idea.
I wouldn't call it taxation at that point, but yes.
Yeah, but this goes to the point that I like that he's talking about, right? There are some people who think we need taxation. So if you title it taxation, even though it's voluntary, you will actually pacify some people by calling it that, even if it isn't, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, a little propaganda here and there is not bad to help people swallow the liberty pill.
Just a little bit of sugar on it. That's all. Tastes a little bit better. That's all. A little bit. That's all. Dave says, libertarians have to have 150 viable answers for 100 problems. Democrats, Republicans only need 1 or 2 viable answers for 100 problems. They blame the other side for any failures. He's right? And this part has always driven me crazy as a candidate. They will have either no answers or one bad answer that's clearly failed. Any answer I give, I get yelled at. It doesn't matter. So I have to have like 8 answers. And then they go, well, okay, maybe. But you don't have an R or D by your name. So clearly, I was on, and for those of you who are watching on Twitter, I just posted this on Twitter about half an hour ago, maybe. I was on Dan Abrams Live, which is a News Nation show. And I was talking about, if we're going to be giving all these billions to the Middle East, why don't we tie the billions to some form of peace, right? Egypt is going to get like $100 billion, whatever they're going to get. Israel's getting like 15, but whatever. They're getting billions and millions of dollars. We're going to give it to them. So can we tie it to peace? They thought I was nuts. I was the crazy one saying, can we tie it to like, I don't know, paying people to voluntarily move or bribing a country to take a part of the refugees or something that's peace, right? You pick the answer. I'm just saying peace, whatever that thing is. And they're like, no, bomb these guys, bomb those guys, bomb these guys. I was the crazy one. And it drives me crazy. I'm sorry. I had to vent for a second there. Go ahead, please. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good. Yeah. I mean, it's just a tough part of getting people out of that mindset that they think that, everything the government does has to be about escalation and force and control and not de-escalation. And, that's a part of getting out of that status-oriented mindset. I mean, even in the Middle East, I sometimes struggle talking to people about these things that they're so focused on trying to figure out who's going to be the next ruler, who's going to be the next president, thinking through how can we actually move toward peace through our principles, through a free market. It's like, do we actually believe in these things that, okay, peace is fostered through trade and people having something worth protecting and actually, getting to have relationships with people through peaceful means? I think that's often missed in the calculation, that so much of what fosters peace, even among different cultures, is freedom in people trading and building relationships, economic relationships. So, I think that needs to be a part of the conversation as well. And it's often missed, sadly.
I love that. I bring this up often as an example of the example I bring up often is Vietnam, right? we spent 10 years blowing up Vietnam, killing tons of Vietnamese, killing tons of Chinese, killing tons of Laotians, tons of Americans, wounding people for 10 years. And then at one point, we literally just walked away. 1975, we just literally ran. We just walked away from it, let it go, took the L, and walked away. And 20 years later, we're trading with them. Now you can buy furniture from Vietnam, right? It just walk away. And in the long run, you start winning. If we walked away, we'd be doing a whole lot better. But speaking of that back and forth, I want to bring up something else, which I love that you talk about. You focus also on entrepreneurship. Now, I do too. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's huge. I'm an entrepreneur myself, been an entrepreneur for 19 years now. And it's how I think people in particularly poor neighborhoods are able to move up in the world, get out of poverty. It's a common thing. And I bring up entrepreneurship. I talk about the idea of an ownership mindset. You bring up entrepreneurship, but a lot of that is property rights. I don't like using the phrase property rights. That phrase to me makes most people, and I live in New York City, so most people are more left-leaning in my city. We're about 6-1 Democrat to Republican in my city. When you say property rights, people immediately think of, oh, that's big, wealthy people who own buildings and stuff. That is exactly where their heads go. They cannot imagine anything other than that. If I take, property rights on board, oh, because you want the Rockefellers to buy everything. That's exactly how they think immediately. But when I say ownership mindset or entrepreneurship as you use, I think it opens people's minds to, yeah, that's not a bad thing. Okay, that's like the regular person doing well, not the big heavy hitter doing well. Do you have a similar situation when you talk to people about that? Do they go to, well, you care about big business, or all you care about is the Rockefellers of the world? How do you handle that? Two parts. My question is terrible. I'm sorry. I was too busy yapping. Here is a better part. I'm going to give you a better question in two parts. Part number one, is that why you focus on entrepreneurship? Part number two, what kind of pushback do you get? Much better.
Yeah, I think that with entrepreneurship and property rights, obviously you're going to have people who get, as you mentioned, triggered because you use those terms, and they bring in a bunch of other contexts with cronyism and historical violence, and they'll associate those things together. And for that, I just like to get to the root with those people and get to what it is that they're saying and what they're talking. Just really break down their own terms. If I'm going to have a serious conversation with someone about those things, you just have to get them to state what it is that they believe and why, so that you can actually talk with them on their terms. Otherwise, you're just going to be talking past each other anyway. You'll be using things that mean different things to each other. So that's mostly it. But I would say otherwise, I don't shy away too much from it. Otherwise, because when it comes to entrepreneurship, I think that's something that is a forefront of why we have such an incredible philosophy that empowers so many people around the world to flourish and have prosperity. We are a philosophy and a philosophical group that has this idea that everybody can benefit from voluntary trade, and literally through the act of purchasing, make each person richer, right? Someone's giving up money or currency in exchange for something because they value it more than that, money or currency. And the person likewise who's giving up the product or service is doing the same. And so we benefit each other in those ways. And the more that we have those, the more that people become more prosperous. And, even things like, I know recently there was this whole thing with Mr. Beast, right? Drilling a bunch of wells across, Africa and Kenya specifically, I think. People were shaming him because he's out there providing people with clean water. And it's no, this is beautiful. Like we should monetize charity. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we are providing value to others. We're exciting people. We're entertaining people. And in the process, we're also saving lives. And I think that this divide that is an artificial divide between this idea of there's altruism versus selfishness, which I think is a false divide, that they bring up and try to demonize people who are entrepreneurs with. I think that is really what's holding people back from understanding the bounties of prosperity that comes through the respective individual body and property rights. So to me, what I'd like to focus on, especially with entrepreneurship, is how, this form of prosperity, when we take it away from government control, when we think about things that are less controlled, brings bounty to even the poorest people, right? And you can think of it in this way. I like this conceptualization. Andy Warhol, he was a artist, very popular, iconic American artist who did this mass reproduction thing. And one of the things that he pointed out was that you could be the president, or you could be Joe Schmo homeless guy, and you can enjoy a can of Coca-Cola, right? A drink. And the point there that I thought that, in his artistic expression, he was pointing out was that prosperity enables that even the rich and the poor share in the same products of industry, right? You could have a homeless person sitting on the ground using an iPhone, and technically, and the iPhone could be used by someone who's literally a rich CEO, right? That someone could be using an Android, the latest whatever Samsung, right? Even people who are in poverty have these products of technology that if they can just purchase it one time and keep it, they keep being able to use it, right? And it's only when the government puts these forever, fees and bills on people that it's harder to maintain those things, just like with property taxes, and things like that, where it's like, no matter what you do, you're constantly indentured to the government. So, that's what I like to point to is what's keeping people out of moving, out of poverty, right? Because again, even in America, poor people have new clothes, right? That, they're able to just by panhandling, be like, oh, I made enough money to go get some, Burger King or McDonald's, and I went into Walmart and got a new shirt. They got whatever. It's really kind of wild when you think about it, especially in historical economic context, where it's like even the homeless people seem to live better than most people did 500 years ago, right? So, we just got to remind people of the bounties.
I want to touch two pieces of that, and they both go towards entrepreneurship. The first one is people who have been in giving or nonprofits with heavy hitters know that it's all about selfishness. It is not at all about altruism at all. This guy doesn't, give money to the kids, except that he wants his name on a wing of a hospital, right? He's got money. He wants his name on a hospital. And someone might go, well, God, don't take the money. So let the kids die. Give the guy the name on the hospital. Fine. It'll be a nice plaque, a big one. Like, we'll get you a really big plaque. But save the kids. It's fine. And we'll even call it the Jack Lloyd Hospital. Fine. Just save the kids. I don't really care. So this concept of it's only out is not true and not a bad thing, right? If I want to go off and cure cancers because I want you to call it the sharp cure, who cares? Cure cancer, right? But I want to have it called the sharp cure because I have a big ego. Who cares? I don't think that matters. That's number one. And the second part is outside of the system, which is almost always entrepreneurs, is where all of an innovation comes from. The great thing you want is not done by the average system, right? The great medical thing didn't come from the doctors at the lab that's run by the government. It comes by something else, right? Somebody else gives them the thing, and let's try this, try that. Constantly, you find people who you gain something by the entrepreneur, the person thinking outside the box. And the more that we stifle entrepreneurship, the more that we stifle ourselves and innovation. And the example of that is you see now in America. It used to be America was always coming out with the most patents in the world, like there was no tomorrow. We were clearly the leader in the rest of the world. It wasn't even close. That's no longer true. You're finding other countries now having more patents than us. And that was not a thing before. And that's my example of as we begin to stifle the entrepreneur, things collapse. But it's the second piece. And that is people always ask me, well, Larry, when are these going to get so bad that people revolt, people, change and adjust? Every serious revolution that's been successful has happened because of a middle class. The middle class are the people who actually go, I have enough to lose, but enough to move people. I haven't forgotten where I came from, but I have enough leadership and or resources to move forward. Our revolution was a revolution of the middle class, right? The middle class is South Africa because of the black middle class. That's why they got rid of apartheid, right? As the middle class grows and gets bigger, now things change, right? When they don't, they collapse. And I think as America destroys the middle class, it solidifies the leadership. And I think either openly or somehow under their facade, they know it. Did I go too far on that one?
Well, I would just agree. Generally, it's tough to have the time and resources to resist and to push back tyrannical government, if you're just barely subsisting. Sometimes there's total collapse when things are so bad that economically everyone's just in chaos and in violence. Think like Zimbabwe with their hyperinflation. But yes, if you're to mount a meaningful resistance, you need some people to have enough resources to be able to continue to build coalitions to either politically and or in guerrilla tactics to try to oust a tyrannical regime. Absolutely. So it's always going to be a significant contingent of people who are going to need to be able to come together to do that.
Well, I appreciate Joe. Trust me, he wants the sharp jab. So thank you, Joe. You trust me. So if I do ever create the cure for cancer, at least Joe will take it. He'll believe in me. Somebody will take it. At least one guy will take my jab. That's good. I love that. It's very good. You don't know this person. Who is this? The Folos? Who is this person? I don't know who person is.
I don't know who that is. Yeah, that's
I don't know who that is. Yeah, I don't know. Yes. If we are turn the U.S. into a true republic, its only laws should be the enshrinement of individual body and property rights, and declares any attempt to erode these rights as treasonous. I think this point's a critical one that I bring up. People always ask me, well, Larry, do you want the government to go away? I said, no, I'm not saying that. If we're going to have a government, it should have one important job: to protect the rights of the individual against local bullies. Right? That should be the number one. And that's what I said the state government should be. Right now in New York State, our government is the bully. So when the local bully is doing something, it's just enforcing the king or queen's will, right? It's the local baron enforcing the king or the queen's will. I would like it to where the local baron who wants to do something bad, well, now the king comes in and goes, no, these are my subjects. Well, that sounds terrible. But we have an imperial family in New York. I can't stop that. We name our bridges after them. We name our bridges after Cuomo's, right? We have an imperial family. We just do. So if I'm going to have a king, damn it, then at least have my king support his people by stopping the local barons from being bad. So I think that happens all the time. I do want to go on to one more thing, if I could. An idea that sounds good, that I like, that seems to make sense, but the amount of pushback I get against it is insane. And that is the idea of restorative justice. And the reason why I get pushback, and I've talked about it more than once, is that people seem to almost be bloodthirsty in a way. They want vengeance. They don't want restorative. And I even brought up an idea once. I said, okay, so some guy comes to my house, and in this case, he's an addict in this case. He comes to my house to steal stuff to buy for his addiction. So he breaks into my house, steals my stuff. In this case, he steals $2,000 worth of stuff. Sells it, gets his drug. The cops catch him. They go, great, we're going to put you in jail now. And I go, awesome, what about my stuff? Well, he sold it. Okay, so I got robbed once by him. Now my insurance rates go up. I got robbed twice. Now I'm paying for him in jail. I got robbed 3 times. And when he comes out, he still can't get a job. He's learned nothing. So he's going to rob somebody else. So someone else can get robbed 3 times. And when I said that, I go, yeah, you're right. So I said, well, how about if we had some kind of plan to where he wouldn't just be screwed, he'd be able to somehow work it off, somehow able to pay me back. They said, that sounds good, but he's a criminal. I'm not joking. That's what I get, but he's a criminal. You must get that kind of pushback. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of people who have their own opinions about what justice should be and this, that. And obviously, when we're talking about the libertarian context, there's always going to be limits to that. At a bare minimum, the act of reciprocity, you can't go and then escalate things. Someone steals $10 from you, you can't steal $1 million back or something, right? So we have proportionality there as kind of a bare minimum thing. But I do bring up in A Vision for a Libertarian Future about how in so many ways, the restorative model, the rehabilitative model is something that libertarians should embrace because of the long-term ramifications of just having a pure retributive, that is a punitive model, which is this old model that, basically the main focus should be the suffering of the person, as opposed to how can this person be helped so they don't offend again, which of course has a lot more long-term benefit there than just making it so this person gets out of jail or prison and then is like, okay, I can't even get a job, I can't do anything, I'm back to being addicted or stealing and or whatever else is going on in their life. So I think that is something that libertarians should value as people who are trying to restore property rights. It provides a better opportunity, in my opinion, for these people who are offenders to meaningfully go after, whenever they're finished, and to be productive, and from that pay back possibly, what has been lost, stolen, damaged, or whatever else. So, I think that is pretty much, something that's missed in the discourse. I do also have a bit of, retributive justice points, I say, for some of the worst things. I think there is also a flip side to that, and that in many ways there is this idea that if someone is a serial murderer, or a serial aggravated robber, that kind of person, that, okay, well, then the government can ethically hold them in a prison for 30, 40 years, whatever, have people be stolen from, millions of dollars, all these different types of programs that are for them. And it's like, and they say, and because, okay, you can't have the death penalty kind of thing. And I think that's a little bit naive on that aspect, because again, if you're being kept in these type of really unhealthy conditions long-term in prison, your life is being shortened. The suicide rate is rampant. The murder rate, the rape rate is rampant when you're in prisons. So it's not like this thing where it's like, oh, okay, and the guy lives happily ever after for 30 years. It's like, no, your life's just being shortened, but in prison, and you're being tortured before your life is shortened and you die. So I think that there's a balance between those. And of course, there's a lot of issues and things that people be concerned about when they talk about this, like, innocent people. Of course, the Innocence Project is great, and they show how much corruption there is. So I think that those points more often point out the problems of the justice system generally, and not the actual concept of reciprocity of someone his life ended because they're Dahmer, right? I mean, obviously, someone, when you have that much evidence, that much, mass murder, I just don't think that, paying for them to live for the next 20, 30 years is really wise or ethical. And of course, tying that into, the original premise with rehabilitation, I think victim-oriented justice is very important. I think that victims should have a say about whether they wish to give grace, for whatever reason or not. And of course, there's going to be issues with that, like, oh, were they, a part of the calculation of calling a hit or something like that, like, it's a husband or something like that. But again, those are the things that you can easily deal with in a libertarian legal order, and avoid having direct victims.
But the concept of this is the problem that bothers me, right? And I do a lot of consulting. I do some consulting for defense attorneys, and what people don't realize is when it's a law, the way laws are written, the crime isn't against the person, the crime's against the state. Right. So when you murder somebody or steal someone's stuff, that's a crime against the state. So the state has to punish you because it's a crime against the state. So your idea of grace is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you want, right? It doesn't matter. They say all the time, well, she's not pressing charges. It doesn't matter. You sit on TV all the time, well, I can't do it. She won't press charges. It doesn't matter. The DA will decide whether they're charging you regardless of who says what. Now, if the woman disagrees, the man disagrees, then you may have a weaker case, and they won't prosecute because the case is weaker. But you have no say. Right. No one says you have no say. They decide to charge when they decide to charge, however they decide. Any crime is not against you, it's against the state. And I think that mindset is a total change of mindset. We've got to shift that mindset without question. So if I could, I do want to grab some of the stuff. But first, guys, if you like what you're seeing, I'm going to get a couple comments in a second. Please click the like button. It's important. Not enough of you are clicking like. I'm getting mad now. Click that damn like button. I need more people clicking the like button. Please do that. Also, if you're watching on Twitter, retweet this right now. A little retweet helps. Please do so. It is important. And if you want to understand what Jack is doing, head over to his website, jackvlloyd.com. Details are on both YouTube and on Facebook. You can see what he's doing. Check out his buy his book. Great stuff. Do the whole thing. Yes, all of the things. Do all of the things. Absolutely. Let me grab a couple more of this if I could. Let's see here. Chris asked a question. He says, as a voluntarist, does Jack see politics or political parties as a legitimate avenue for change or to introduce people to these ideas?
Yeah, so, there's definitely a split among voluntarists, some who are apolitical. They see political action as being totally unacceptable and validating a system. Then there's people who, I fall more into, which would agree with Lysander Spooner, that the political system's forced upon you. It's like someone who's been forced into battle, not of his choosing, and he's literally just tried to stop, being killed and stolen from. And that was, in a no treason constitution of authority by Lysander Spooner. So I definitely see the political avenue as an opportunity for education and for trying to, stall or, stave state power. I think that it's tough. It is very difficult to do. It is more likely for most people that they're just going to be on the educational front. There are certainly small wins. And I think in the past few years, in terms of libertarian success, there has never been greater success in terms of seeing some changes, going from Justin Amash's changing registration to be the first Libertarian Congress, to a Vermont legislator doing the same, to people being put into different offices at small local levels. So again, you shouldn't discount that as a means to that end. I think there is a lot of all or nothing thinking, unfortunately, when it comes to political power, and some people think that there's no meaningful way to stall or stop the state within it, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at realities, right? Like reality of legalization of marijuana, for example. Clearly, that has an effect on people being incarcerated in California. Good luck getting someone convicted on marijuana possession, for whatever. It's just not going to happen. So you have to look at victories and evidence of nullification or tax cuts and this or that. It does happen. It's rare. It's tough, but we should be taking every victory we can, because the goal should always just be about ending the violence of the state. And that's why I say, no matter what, if we can curtail or end wars, that's fewer people murdered, right? So I'm someone who's an all means advocate. That is all, ethical means, not advancing and escalating force. I'm for trying to dismantle the size, scope, and power of the state in whatever ways we can, because it will take everything. It'll take changes in academia. It will take changes in community organizing. It'll take changes in culture and music, or even comics. It'll take changes in people running for office and the messages that they present. So we need the total package. We need the bloggers, the people who write articles, the people who are just families who are peaceful parents and passing it forward, who are reading Tuttle Twins to their kids. We need everything. And so it's just silly to reject one avenue just because it's not your thing. You don't have to do or be everything. Just be the best of what you enjoy and live a principled life, and let those ripple effects take their root.
I am good at getting my ass kicked in elections. See, so I keep doing that because I'm good at that. There we go. So Joe has a question. He says, can a criminal volunteer to be put to death rather than serve out a life sentence incarcerated? Well, I'll go to, I think he means can and should. Let me do the can part. Once a criminal is sentenced, no. But could a criminal, in theory, negotiate a plea deal for the death sentence? Depending upon the state, in theory, they could, but that never happens, right? You negotiate a plea deal to avoid that. That's why, by the way, to talk about Jeffrey Dahmer, he pled so he would not be killed, right? So yes, can someone do it prior to being sentenced? Theoretically, yes, but in reality, no. And then once you're sentenced, you would have to try to get resentenced somehow with a plea or something. So no, not have to get sentenced. I think the question Joe means, though, is for you, Jack. Do you think that a criminal should be able to volunteer for death for committing a crime? I think that's what he actually means.
Well, I mean, yeah, just in the general concept of people should have the right to choose when they end their lives. That's a part of one's self-sovereignty, is if you don't wish to live anymore, as long as how you do it is not violating the body or property of others. Of course, I believe people should be allowed to end their lives. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that, you should just.
But hold on. In this case, he's not. In this case, he is saying, I want the state to put me to death. He is not saying, I want to kill myself, which, of course, it's your life. This is different. He's saying, I stole some guy's car. I don't want to spend 5 years in life. Please, I'd like to have a death sentence.
Well, I would say that it would be, to me, a little, immaterial, just because, again, if this guy really doesn't want to live, he can just put something around, his neck in the jail cell. So it's I don't think that is really a core thing. I mean, should someone be able to say, okay, I want to, end my life? Yes, of course. And that could happen with someone who's convicted as well, as they say, I'd like to go through that process. And I would think that, in a more libertarian order, there would be more transparency, a counseling thing, and why you do that thing. Just like they have in certain places where they have, again, and this issue gets muddied a lot because the places where they brought the assisted early end of life thing has come in context of other bad government interventions, right? The government make the economy bad, and then saying, oh, you have to use our healthcare system, and oh, by the way, we're not going to give you healthcare, so go ahead and off yourself. That obviously has its own problems. But when it comes to an individual who's like, okay, yes, I consciously, I've made my choice, I made my peace, I want to go out on my own terms. You know what I mean? I don't think that should be stopped. And certainly someone could have someone facilitate that. And I don't think that would be considered murder. There's going to be tons of cases like that. Someone has a terminal illness, they're at their end stage, or suffering, and they say, hey, I want to have my goodbyes to my loved ones under a controlled condition. Again, I don't think there's anything ethically wrong with that. But I personally would say, just the generality, that people who are struggling with addiction or depression, things like that, I don't think that there's an ultimate big justiciable like harm with someone trying to stop someone from taking a drastic action. It's, like, let's just say you try to rescue someone jumping off a bridge situation, right? I would say that person may say, no, I didn't want that to be the case, kind of thing. I didn't want to be saved. But again, property rights come into play. Whose bridge is that? What are you jumping into? That kind of thing. It's a little bit academic. I get it, but it's something to seriously consider. That there's a different class between someone who is acting irrationally and just like impulsively, and someone who is actually wanting to choose to end their life early, but without violating the body property of others.
Yes. Roy is a lawyer. He says, not only can't an incarcerated demand to be put to death, they'll put him on suicide watch to prevent that route. So yes, if you want that, you probably shouldn't announce it, or otherwise they will literally go out of the way to stop it. That's a very valid point.
And they'll take away, anything you can do that with. They'll keep anything that you can do that with. I used to be a criminal defense attorney myself, so I definitely, yeah, definitely know.
So yes. Lil J says the working class runs this country. The working class has to change how the country's run. The bus driver has set the tone for the people on the bus. People are butting the hand that feeds them. I think you're right. There was it's just kind of a crazy, I use this piece often because it really affected me in a series I saw. Have you ever seen the series? I think it's Amazon Prime. It might be Netflix. I think it's Amazon Prime. And it's a series called, from the book, The Man in the High Castle. And it is, have you seen it?
Is that I'm just trying to make sure I got this right. It's the alternative universe where the Germans win, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yes.
And in this, I don't want to give the whole thing away, but if anyone wants to watch it, if at one point during the series, one of the American leaders of the occupied America has become a terrible Nazi, right? He's become one. And now he's doing all the terrible Nazi things. And his wife at one point goes, stop. Why? You have to stop. And he looks at her with almost tears in his eyes and says, I don't know how. And that to me made me think, do people walk down a road, particularly middle management, senior management, to where they actually wouldn't know how to stop it even if they wanted to? Like they've sold themselves down that road, that river so far. What do? At one point, you just got to keep doing the bad stuff, right? You've become part of the machine. How do you stop the machine? Am I making sense?
Well, I think everyone has the chance to choose for themselves. They may not like the outcome of what they choose. It may be difficult. It may be painful. It may lead to their death. But everybody can choose to not go along with a situation that they've, participated in up to a point where the ethics, of course, are more than questionable. So I do think everybody has that choice to choose. And I would say everyone is responsible for their individual actions at the end of the day.
There we go. What a great way to wrap this up. Everyone is responsible for their actions at the end of the day. I love that. Did I miss anything, Jack, before we wrap this up?
Yes, one quick thing. I do want to mention that on Indiegogo right now, my Voluntarist comic series is currently doing its next arc. And so this is a series that's been in production for about 10 years. We just finished a remaster. It's a 192-page comic book arc that is the origin story. And right now we're funding on Indiegogo right now on, I guess you could say, we've been doing this about 25 days. Or no, sorry, we've been doing this about, 14 days. We have 46 days left. I just look at another part. And so it's been an amazing project. It's one of the most unique stories for liberty out there. It's not some preachy thing. It's not like, oh, here's, a Jack Chick track of voluntarism. It's actually a real story. And so that's a part of the cultural thing that I like doing, is I like introducing characters and concepts that value individual liberty in a way that's just not being done anywhere else. Because, you know, you watch the mainstream shows and it just keeps getting more and more in your face that it's this type of leftist, socialist, Democrat, statism, SJWing of everything. And it's really overwhelming. And so my comic series is the opposite. It is the statist paradigm turned its head, where government is not seen as a default good, where the characters have that ethical virtue stance more clearly defined. There still is, of course, character development and questions of, you know, what's right or wrong, but it is something that is definitely going to make you inspired and really question what in the comic is fictional versus what is real. There's a lot of things in there that make you go, huh, what ties to maybe real world and what was comic fiction. So there's just some cool stuff in there too. I got, you know, this aluminum bookmark here. It looks awesome. You can hear it's nice and metal. And there's just some really cool perks on there. So definitely check that on out too.
There we go. All good. Guys, I want to say thank you so much for watching and listening this afternoon. I'll be on again at 7 p.m. this evening, and I'll actually be doing a music review, believe it or not. Yes, I'm into culture all of a sudden. I don't know why. I live in a bunker. Anyway, but I am. Jack, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you, and I will see you all very soon.